Yo, what is up guys? Today I'm going to be sharing with you 10 Fortnite tips to help you dominate every game in the last solo victory cup of the season. This week is the last chance for you to get earnings from the solo victory cup, so I'm going to share everything you need to know to give you the best chance possible. Without further ado, make sure to drop a like and subscribe. Let's get straight on into today's video. Now just quickly before we get into the video, I just want to mention that literally this Sunday, so the 20th of October, I'm hosting a £200 tourney over on my Twitch to celebrate hitting 20,000 subs. Anyone is welcome to play. You simply have to follow me on Twitch and verify with Unite in my Discord server. Both links are in the description down below, so make sure to check that out, and I hope to see as many of you there in the stream as possible on Sunday. So now let's get straight on into these solo victory cup tips. Okay, so the very first tip I have for you guys is about mastering your early game. Now, I think many people overlook this, but your early game starts as soon as you're dropping in. Notice here how I'm already scouting around my drop trying to identify any other players. So I'm aware now that Daru is down below me here, just so I have an idea. The reason why I'm doing this and I'm scouting around is because when I'm landing out back of the Underworld here, I now know that there is a player at Underworld that could look to key me, and it's important that you guys get this information when you are landing in. The second thing I want to mention as soon as I drop here is look at my focus straight away. As you guys can see, as soon as I get loot, I'm going to the fast farming mats at my drop spot, and by the time there is literally 87 people up left at the drop, so we've landed less than a minute, I already have 500 mats. So if that guy from Underworld looks to key me instantly, not only have I got basic guns and a loadout to fight him, as well as minis from this guaranteed ammo box, but I've got 500 mats to fend him off as well if necessary. Just a little thing about mastering the very early part of your early game. For tip number 2, I want to talk about not taking mid-game fights. And I'm going to show you guys an example of what happened to me and exactly why you should avoid mid-game fights. Notice that as this very moment here, I've come off of the Flowberry Fizz from using one of the Nitro rings, and I get tagged at the start of the engagement here, as you guys will see, when I'm not looking. So this guy, as you can see, Softy111 tags me. Now immediately my first thinking, is build a snail. Now the snail technique, for those of you that may not know, is basically 4 metal boxes like this, and this is just to signal to the opponent, okay, this is not a fight worth taking, this is going to be a long drawn out fight. And this was in the last game of the Duo Cash Cup. As you guys can see, we're on pretty congested side of zone. This is just a signal to him to leave him alone. Sefty in this situation chooses not to leave me alone, and I want to bring your guys' attention to the fact that coming into this fight, he had 150 mats. He's already used some mats and he begins to use more. Not only do I tag him for a little bit, it's not very much, but I get a little bit of returning damage with the SMG, but he's used already 500 wood builds. Now I want to show you guys why this is important, because as I disengage out here and he tries to look for tags for me, he now only has 1,000 mats, so he's used 500 wood. So now what's he got to go and do? Well, as you guys will see, he has to now go and refarm his mats. Now okay, this might not be an issue, but I'm going to show you guys why this actually is an issue, because all this time that he spent here lurking around the backside of zone refarming his mats is pushing him further and further away from the zone and allowing all of these players to get in front of him. He's got 2 to his left, one of these being me. He's got people in Nitro Dome, people just above him, a fight here, and all of these players over time are rotating in front of him. As you can see, Reggie's moving in front of him, Banana, all while he's just refarming back the wood, which he didn't have to use. If he simply just Flowberry Fizzed past me and continued going towards zone, he would have been in a better position. And I believe this is sort of a cannon effect, which leads to him actually going down in the mid game of this game and missing out qualifying. Tip number 3 is all going to be about not becoming overly greedy. And again, I'm going to use Softy as a good example. This is the guy that W keyed me and then eventually went down mid-game. And I'm going to show you guys why he went down in mid-game. Know that in this scenario right here, Softy is safely boxed up in this stone 1x1. And it's not like he has 0 mats. He has 1,200 mats. And notice how Imran, I'm going to call him, has a full metal base, full stacked, everything stacked, full HP. And he has sight lines onto Softy right here. Well, what does Softy do? First of all, he's not used his Fizz to get him to full HP before going out of his box. He's come out on 150, again being a little greedy there, and this gives Imran the view of sight onto Softy because Softy's trying to refarm his wood to get a bit more mats. Now this here is overly greedy. There's wood all around the map. He could have rotated further in or got wood, or he could get wood back endgame, but instead he tries to go for wood. He opens up sight lines from the tower up there. He opens up sight lines from Imran down here, and as you guys can see, Imran gets a beam onto him and he goes down fully in the mid game. He had 1,200 mats there, had a fist, had everything he needed, just because he got greedy for 2 trees, which he didn't necessarily need and could have picked up later in the game. Make sure you guys don't get greedy, especially when going for more mats when there's other players that can have angles on you. Tip number 4 is all going to be about setting mid-game objective. Now, mid-game objectives are crucial, and they could be in the form of a bunker, for example, or just a forecast tower. But this gives you something to aim for in the mid-game, which will benefit your game. A forecast tower will help you get better rotations and place further. A bunker will give you better loot. You can upgrade your gatekeeper if you need one. You have a high chance of getting a fizz, and you can also use the bunker to get lots of metal. Now with my drop spot, I also want to point out that as I'm gliding in, I always check whether the bunker is spawned, and this is something you guys should do as well, depending on where you're dropped, and it helps analyze what your mid-game objective is going to be for that game. You also have a high chance of getting the witch's broom for the bunker. Sorry, not a high chance, but you have a chance of getting the witch's broom, so it's also good for helping getting fizz and witch's broom, for example. You also get max armored walls. So basically just go for a bunker or a forecast in mid-game, or make sure you have a focus for your mid-game and you're not just wandering around aimlessly. Tip number 5 is not being afraid to stay in Storm. Now, the reason why I said this is because, for example, this is one of my games again where I played Storm. If we have a look at the map right now, you guys will see the benefits of staying in Storm. Look at where I'm positioned and look at the entire area around me. This whole side, the whole of Underworld, Rebels, pretty much all the way down to the Raft, where there are still some players fighting for it, is completely unconned. Now, this has its benefits because you're not likely to get W keyed. Now, I would only recommend this for opens because there's no heal off, so you basically can play Storm. In finals, I wouldn't recommend this because then you'll get storm sickness earlier should you get to the heal off. However, again, when you guys get the opportunity to sit in Storm, if you have lots of medkits, for example, and if zone pulled away from you, make sure you utilize it. It's basically a free ticket through the mid game and a free ticket to help get a lovely dead side rotation into the next zone. For example, up here near Doomstadt, where as you guys can see, that's where I'm heading, and there is barely any players up there. Now, moving on to tip number 6, I want to cover something which I think causes a lot of people to die when rotating in endgame zones. As you guys can see, I'm over on the far side here, so I pull a really quite far 8th zone pull. Now, I have fizz in my inventory, and what I always think is important, especially in this meta, is if you have fizz and you can, go early. So you guys can see that I already try and get ahead of the rotate, and I actually do a pretty good job. No one's looking at me because I time the rotate very perfectly, and I get myself in a much better position in zone right here for literally nothing except from 5 fizz. Now in a much better position in zone to rotate out to the backside of zone here. That part of the rotate was fine. The next bit is where I'm going to show you guys where I went wrong. Well, remember I said that it's always important to go fast in this meta. I made the mistake right here of sitting and looking back at every single player. The zone starts to come in and I get too focused on other players and what they're doing instead of what I'm meant to be doing. And this means that when I'm sat in my cone, all of a sudden the storm is on my back. You guys will see if we come in, all of a sudden the storm is on my back right over there. And that's going to cause me issues because look at all the players below me right here that have to rotate in, so they're going to be looking at me. Look at the players front side of zone that can look back at me, and you guys will see that as I come out of this cone to do the rotate, immediately I get beamed. And it's not even that I get beamed from this player behind me. He could have hit me with the gatekeeper. Oh, he does hit me with the gatekeeper, sorry. It's that at the same time I also get beaten from the front side of zone from Lowski, who is looking at me as well. And as you guys can see, I get jumped in on, and boom, we go down. Now that all come from people rotating in front of me like Lowski here, because then they can look back in this side of zone. So if we look at Lowski's point of view right now, look at how free this is for him. He can fully look back on everyone rotating through. He's got an angle on balls. He's going to have an angle on over. He's got an angle on blides. All of these people that are coming through here. In this meta, if you have fizz and you have the opportunity, make sure you rotate early, because if you get stuck in the back side of zone, you're only going to become victims to the people at front side of zone that did the correct rotation and are looking back at you, same as this guy right here. Now I want to talk about taking height, specifically in the 10th zone, as this is the best time to take height. And I'm going to show you guys Victor here, who you may have seen from a previous video that went on to win this solo victory cup game, and how he textbookly took height. Now in the 10th zone, this is the perfect time to take height, and it's because it's a free opportunity with often it not being claimed. But the reason why is because what you can do is you can position yourself on front side. So as you can see, Victor scouts out height and then immediately goes to position himself on front side. Once he boxes up on front side, he then continues to scout out height, and once he realizes that height is free after blocking up opponents, he pops his fizz and then immediately looks back. Now the reason here why he looks back is to either see if height is unclaimed, like it is, as you guys can see, this guy hasn't properly claimed height, or if he could have chopped out height. In this scenario, he doesn't have to chop out height because height is pretty much unclaimed. He can challenge for it with the fizz effect that he's already popped. Boom, he is now on height. And now his next play is really smart, because once you get onto height, your job is not finished. The next move is to tarp to one side of the zone. If I speed up this gameplay, you guys will see that Victor only ever tarps to the right hand side of zone here in just a second. And the reason for this is because it allows him to look down to his left hand side. If he tarped down the middle of the zone, it would be a lot harder to look both sides. So if you tarp to one side of the zone, you get an easy sight onto just one side of the zone. So easily here, he can look down onto everyone, apply pressure to the players that are below him that are more stacked, and it just allows him to hold height effectively. A brilliant height take. This is textbook how you guys want to do it. Tip number 8 is actually going to be more of a tip which you guys need to implement within yourselves, and that's just staying positive and a positive mentality during the tournament. Solos is such an annoying game mode. Trust me, I know it. I understand everyone's pain. Trying to play the Solo Victory Cup is so tough, but it literally takes 2 good games to qualify to make the finals. You need 2 top 5s, that is it, and you can get to a final scenario. Once you get to the finals, if you play it correctly, literally anything can happen. I mean, Victor made his first earnings right here in this game, and that was all because he got 2 good games in the opens. All you need is 2 good games. If you die 2 or 3 times off spawn, it doesn't matter too much. It doesn't mean your tournament is over. Keep that head up and just continue pushing through and get those top 5s. Tip number 9 is going to be more focused on the Solo Victory Cup finals, but it does also apply in the opens, and that's stop being afraid to go for refreshes. In this scenario, Victor has literally 0 builds, so he has to jump in. He has to get a refresh. He could choose to stay up on the cones right here, and he probably would survive a little longer than if he dropped down onto Gorball, hit, and messed up in the fight, but he knows that in order to win this game, he has to get a refresh. He has to get more materials. Dropping back in Storm early like Daria here is not going to win him the game, so without hesitation, he jumps in on Gorball, and unfortunately, replay does lag at this moment, but he hits the side jump shot and he picks up that elim, and that gives him the 5 builds, which allows him to top just a little further into zone, allowing him to survive a few more seconds, where then he can play the medkits, drop back into zone, and ultimately win the game for it. Had he not picked up these 5 builds and eventually floppers from getting this refresh of Gorball, he would not have won the heal off and not won the game. There's no point in you guys playing to get a top 10 in the finals. The only reason you guys should be playing is to get that win. I know a top 10 is cool and all, but if you have to jump in and get a refresh to win, you go for that refresh and just hope you pull through. For my 10th and final tip, I want to talk about identifying the skill of your opponents, because there is times and there might be times in lower elo where you want to take a fight, or you might be forced into a mid-game fight at some point. Now, what I want to talk about is, again, making sure you know whether the player is really high skilled or really low skilled, and you can tell this by how they react to the initial opening to the fight. For example, in this situation, when I tag Slaxy, he continues running forward and then just builds a few wood walls. Now, this is an indication to me that this guy is, 1, not a very confident player, so immediately I'm the one that's more confident in this fight. I have the advantage, I have the momentum. 2, he's probably not a very good player, because if he was a good player, he would do what I showed earlier in the video, which is the snail technique, and box up in a few metal boxes to try and slow down the fight. In this scenario, he literally pops a mini on a wood stair, so I can tell that this guy isn't great, and then that means it's a fight worth me taking. There are fights that are worth taking. It is a point at the end of the day, and if you can identify that the guy is worse than you and that you are a pretty solid fighter, then it is worth just jumping in. As you guys can see, this guy literally just continues to sit in wood. I know he's a bad player. I know it's worth pushing it, just for the 1 point. So we get him with the piece control on the wall, and we pick up that easy elim point right there. We get our refresh max mats. It was definitely worth pushing that. I hope you guys have enjoyed today's video. If you have, make sure you've dropped a like, subscribed. I hope to see you on Sunday for the 20k tourney. Peace out from me.